Hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a tier ranking video. You guys, I love to watch these videos and I love to make them as well. I actually have a historical fiction tier ranking video that I can attach above for you to take a look at. But today I wanted to look at thriller books, and I wanted to look at all the thriller books I've read since I've been on Booktube, which I've been on Booktube for like over 4 years now. Granted, 2 of those years were over on my homeschooling channel, which is always linked below, and like the last couple years have been on this channel. So I feel like thrillers are really fun to look at because I have loved reading thrillers, but I've also really disliked reading thrillers. I feel like they're very polarizing for me. And so I went back through everything I've read over the past 4 years and I put it on this little tier ranking website, and we're gonna chat through some books. So let's just hop in as I rank the almost 50 thriller books. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back, all the things. Like I said, today's a tier ranking video and we're going through thriller books. Now, when I was compiling my list, I only included books that were truly thrillers, not really mysteries. So I didn't include any Agatha Christie or Thursday Murder Club or anything like that. I wanted it to be more of that thriller type book, edge of your seat, potentially a little bit scared and intense sort of reads. So those are the books I pulled. So let's just go to my computer, which I have right here, and we're gonna go through all of the books. All right, so here's the website for the tier ranking. And I want to show you a little bit about how I set up my categories before we get started. So I put in Can't Stop Thinking About It as like a thriller book that's just really impacted me. And sometimes I randomly will think about these books, or I loved it, or I liked it, it was good. The next one I have is Should Have DNF'd. So for me, there are some books that I finished, but I shouldn't have. And those will go in here, and then just the true DNFs, the ones that I knew from the beginning, it wasn't a book for me. Okay, so here's all the books we're gonna be going through. And let's just hop in. Let's hop in. Okay, so first I have, oh, this Silent Patient. This Silent Patient, oh my gosh. So, Silent Patient, we'll just start with the DNF. There's something about this book that I just didn't love. I didn't like, and this was about the time I was starting to realize that I didn't like psychological thrillers. I don't like certain narrative voices. And you'll see kind of as you see what falls in the should have DNF'd as well as the DNF'd category as to what some of these books are. But this is a book about a woman who shot her husband like 7 times in the face and then stopped talking, and it kind of goes through her story as a psychoanalyst is trying to draw out what happened. We'll leave it at that. Okay, and then the next one, all right, I don't organize these, so I didn't do this on purpose. This is another DNF, so Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Now, I just detested this book. Again, it was very psychological. All right, it was a book about this, I think she was a reporter or something like that, going back to her hometown, and there is something going on. There's some kids being murdered or girls being murdered, something like that, and she has been tasked with reporting it. She has to go live in the same house as her family, like her mother, who she has like a strained relationship with, and her younger stepsister or something like that. Oh my gosh, same thing. I just really detested the inner voice. I'm just not a gritty psychological thriller reader. All right, let's move on. Okay, so the next thing I have here is In the Woods by Tana French. I'm gonna put this in liked it. So this is the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series by Tana French. Now, I liked this book to some extent. I liked figuring out what was happening. I liked figuring out who did it. I just felt it was very wordy. I felt like it was very slow, and I usually don't mind a police procedural type book, which I would call this in that camp a police procedural, especially this first one. And I haven't moved on to the second, but I've heard that I should. It's a little bit different. So I liked it. We'll leave it at that. I liked it. Okay, next. Oh, Lock Every Door. Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Oh, this was a good one. Okay, I'm trying to think if I either loved it. I think I'm gonna put it in loved it. And I might move it up later as I kind of start getting more books in that category. So this is a Riley Sager book about this apartment complex that this woman who's down on her luck is able to get an apartment. She apartment sits, and it seems like a perfect situation, except it's not. There's something sinister about the building. Okay, now what else do I have? Oh, The Stand by Stephen King. Okay, I read this like 10 years ago. So this actually wasn't one that I had read since being on Booktube, but it is a book that I couldn't stop thinking about. I still randomly think about it. The thing about this book is it's huge. It's like a beast of a book. And I'm not sure if I could read it in its entirety again, but I remember when I was reading it being just kind of blown away by the epic scale of this. It felt like a very much a good versus evil. At the beginning of the book, there's a pandemic and only certain people survive and then they band together. But then there's like this evil force. And even that I can't quite remember. It's been so long since I've read this book, but I remember being like blown away by it. It was so good. And so clearly that's a can't stop thinking about it book. All right, what do I have? The Perfect Wife. This is, I should have DNF'd it, hands down. This is a great example of this category. This book had to do with this AI, it was artificial intelligence, of this woman who was crafted by this man. And if I'm remembering right, it has to do with kind of his late wife maybe, and he was trying to make someone just like her. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting. But I really detested the AI aspect of this, especially if you're talking kind of marriage. Oh, Falling by T.J. Newman. I feel like this book, it could either be loved it or liked it. I'm going to put it in liked it because it was a fast-paced, very interesting book, but that's about all it was. It was about this hijacked plane and this man who had the choice to like either crash the plane or save his family who had been like kidnapped and held hostage, sort of idea. So it was good. It was fast-paced. It was fun. Oh, The Broken Girls. I loved that book. I think I'll put it here, just for now. The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I love the historical aspect to it as well as kind of the mystery, as where it was telling the story of kind of this, if it was an institute or a girls' school or something like that back in the day, which was for troubled teens, and there was something that happened. Like there was a dual timeline and she was figuring out what happened back then. I thought it was really good and really clever and I really enjoyed it. Oh, right. So this is Alias Emma. I can't see the author. I can't remember who this is, but I read this recently and I would put it in liked it. It was just kind of this like quick spy thriller novel about this girl who was training to be like part of MI5 or MI6 or something like that. And this was her first mission to get this person of interest across the city. And it seemed like she have found herself kind of in a situation where she didn't know who to trust. So it felt a lot like Mission Impossible. And so it was a perfect book for that. Like it was so fun and fast-paced and I enjoyed her character. And I probably will read more. I think the author just put out another book in that series. All right, The Writing Retreat. Oh yes, big DNF. I really disliked this book. I really disliked it. This one had so much promise too. It had to do with this girl who had like entered to win a spot at this writing retreat with this like renowned author, her favorite author from childhood, and she's trying to be an author. She's kind of down on her luck. Something's happened with her best friend. So she goes to this retreat and the idea is they have to produce their work and they have to kind of have deadlines and they have to prove that their story is progressing or something like that. And then in the end, one person wins like this big pile of money sort of idea. That in and of itself doesn't sound that bad, right? That sounds really interesting. Oh my gosh, I disliked these characters. I disliked the inner monologues. I disliked just kind of their shadiness. They were all just a little bit shady and there's some weird things that were happening. I didn't want to continue. I didn't know if it went further that way or not. It might not have. I just didn't like the direction it was going. So I put it down. And I'm getting better about doing that. Okay, next is Survive the Night. All right, I've read all the Riley Sager books, so you'll see a lot of those here. I'm gonna put this in either likes it or should have DNF'd. I feel like should have DNF'd is a little strong. I feel like I'm gonna put it liked it here. It's about this girl who gets a ride from like this rideshare board at school and then she thinks she is in the same car as a serial killer. And it goes from there. All right, next is, the newest Simone St. James. So I just read this. I'm gonna put this in liked it as well. And so this is called Murder Road. And it's about this road that is like haunted and that people have been dying on it forever. And then our main characters kind of happen upon this road and happen upon a girl on the side of the road who has been stabbed or is hurt in some way. And they become involved and then they become the main suspects. So it was okay. Okay, so Gillian Flynn, Gone Girl, right? This is, I don't think I would put it in can't stop thinking about it, but I definitely loved it. It was the reason I even picked up more Gillian Flynn. It is a little bit more psychological. In my opinion, it didn't go into kind of just that weird, awful headspace that some of them do. So it was still entertaining, and the premise behind it was so good, and I don't feel like I need to explain what Gone Girl's about to anybody on here, but I'm gonna put it in loved it. Oh, Secret History by Donna Tartt. I loved this book. I don't know what it is about this book that really drew me in, but it is a dark academia setting, and it's hailed as kind of like the original dark academia of this pretentious students at this pretentious university in the classics department, and they have this professor they're trying to impress, and they sit around and talk about philosophical things, right? But yet each and every one of their characters is very flawed, and in this book in particular, one of them has been killed, and you know that at the beginning. You know who it is at the beginning, and then you watch the whole thing unravel. You watch it unravel, and it's really interesting. I loved it. I thought it was really good. Same with this one. That's going up there too. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I loved this book. And I know it's a very polarizing book, this one in particular, but it's basically about this woman, Evelyn Hardcastle, who seemingly dies every day. So it's like a Groundhog's Day sort of book. Our main character comes in and he's tasked with figuring out what's going on. But the fun thing is every day resets itself, but he's in the mind or body of a different character, a different person in this scenario. So good. It's so twisty, and it also does a lot of time jumping. So you're not linearly telling the story. Like he'll jump into a person's head that maybe played a role later in the story or earlier in the story, and you're trying to put a timeline on the whole thing, which I loved. I loved it. Okay, moving on to a one I didn't love. Okay, Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. This book is another example of a psychological thriller. Yes, the twist was clever. Okay, yeah, okay. The twist was really clever. I get that. I disliked my reading of this though. That's the hard part. It's about this woman who's in like a coma from a car accident, and her loved ones are around her, like her husband and her sister and all these people, and they're talking and they don't know that she can hear them. And so this is told in like almost 3 timelines, if I remember right. It's told like right before the accident, time in the coma, and like during her childhood, and it's telling this whole story. And I did not like the main character. I felt like the head of the main character was just really depressing, and I didn't like it. Okay, moving on. The House Across the Lake. Okay, I loved this book. I thought it was a really good one. I know this one is, again, one that people didn't necessarily like because of how it ended, which I'll leave it at that. But this is basically about a woman who is spying on her neighbors across the lake. In this case, it's another example. Okay, the first example. We'll see some more in my list of an alcoholic main character, like our narrator's unreliable, right? This is one of the books that did this. And I don't always love that trope. Actually, I forgot to put a book on here. The Train and the Girl, that one. I DNF'd that one because I really didn't like the alcoholic main character. But in this one, I feel like there was enough about her and her story that I was curious about as to like what got her here. Previously, she was an actor in Hollywood, and then her life unraveled and she needed to kind of get away. And then she started spying on her neighbor, and some things happened. Okay, The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This I feel like is one of my least favorite Riley Sagers, but I still am gonna put it in liked it because I still did enjoy it. This had to do with a summer camp setting, and these girls who are all cabin mates, and it's told from our main character's point of view, and all of her friends went missing, if I remember right. And then later in life, she gets an offer to be a camp counselor, and she wants to go back and kind of understand what happened. She can't quite remember what happened. All right, next, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Okay, I'm gonna put this in, I liked it. I don't think I should have DNF'd it. This was not a book that I'm like, oh, I really should have DNF'd. It had some moments that were just so cringy and creepy, and like it definitely tiptoed its way into more horror type aspects, and I don't read horror. For a reason, I don't read horror. I really dislike that. I dislike having that imagery in my head, and that had some of that, but then it also was a really interesting story about this group of friends who like to read, I think, like true crime, and then she thinks maybe her neighbor is actually a vampire. It was really good. If you can handle horror, which I just can't. All right. Oh, The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty. Okay. I really loved that book. I thought it was really interesting. I thought his secret was really interesting because basically this is about a woman who finds a letter from her husband in like the attic or something like that that says like, if I'm dead, read this. But he's not dead. And so she calls him and she's like, oh, haha, I found this. And he's like, oh, don't open it. And she's like, oh, of course I won't. And then of course she opens it, right? And it starts this whole cascade of events where you kind of hear what happened. I wouldn't call it thriller. It's probably more contemporary. Okay, now, oh, there's these books. I might just do them all at once. Where's the first one? Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. So this is book 1. I really enjoyed these. I'm trying to decide if I enjoyed it here or if I enjoyed it here. You know what? I really enjoyed these. They are a YA mystery thriller type book about this girl who goes to a prestigious school in the mountains. And there's like some special way you have to get in. And she says that she's going to solve this murder that happened, or disappearance, I think it was, that happened at this school to the founder of the school, to his like child and wife back in the day. And she starts trying to uncover it all, right? Which I feel like I really enjoy these. The believability of a teenager being able to solve this kind of thing, you know, it's fine. You know, if you can sweep that under the rug, I really enjoyed these. So I'm gonna put The Vanishing Star. I remember Stare. I think that's the second one. And then The Hand on the Wall. I feel like I remember liking the third one better than the second one. But all in all, it's a really good series. And I just realized there's actually a fourth one that I should just pick up and see what it's about. Because I enjoyed her character. I think it was her character's name was Stevie. And just kind of what she went through to figure it all out. It was really fun. The latest Riley Sager. Okay, the latest Riley Sager. I really liked it. I think I'm gonna put it here. I really liked it though. It was such an interesting story. Our main character is the like nursemaid person for an elderly woman who has been accused or was accused in her past of murdering her whole family. And she has remained in the same house, in the same town, and she's become a recluse. And now our main character is interacting with her daily and trying to decide if like, did she do these things? And it goes from there. I felt like it was a very twisty, twist after twist book that I just really enjoyed. Oh, here's another. You know what? This is either loved it. I think I'm gonna put it up here. I think I'm gonna put it at Can't Stop Thinking About It because it is one of those books that I don't know why, but at the time of reading, I just really vibed with it. Now, as I have said when I've talked about this book on lots of videos, is I think for me, it had to do with the fact that the main character was in present day, pregnant and married and just trying to get on with her life, as where in her past, her best friend, her roommate at, I can't remember if it was like Oxford or someplace, was murdered. And you go back and forth in time to try and figure out what was happening, to try and figure out the different players. And she is starting to believe that maybe the person that her testimony put in jail is actually innocent, so who actually did it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it from start to finish. And I think for me as a character-driven reader, it really does help to connect with the characters a bit. Okay, then we have Shiver by Ali Reynolds. Okay, I'm gonna put this in loved it because I have just been reading a lot of And Then There Were None retelling type books, and that is what this book is about, except it is like a group of snowboarders who were like really good, and they were like competing in different tournaments in her past, and she was trying to join this group, and it was kind of this elite group, and then one of their members ended up being murdered or disappeared or something to that notion. But present day, she got like a letter or something that's like, come back, we're doing a reunion. And then of course they lose power, there's a big storm, and all the past gets revealed. It's so good. It's so fun if that's what you're looking for. Oh yeah, I read The Last Flight. I feel like I'll put it here. This had kind of that Man on a Train, whatever the train one is, where it talks about the fact that like two strangers on a train, that's it, where two people meet up in an airport and they agree to do something for each other. And you kind of watch how that plays out. Like they're kind of at the end of their ropes. And I can't remember what's a spoiler or not, so I'm not going to say more than that, but it has to do with boarding a plane and trying to escape. Okay. No Exit. Okay. Can't stop thinking about this one. This is one of those books. It's by Taylor Adams, and it's graphic and it's intense, and it's about this girl who is in kind of a rickety old car, and she's going over a pass, like a mountain pass during the winter, and it's this huge blizzard. And she gets stuck at a rest stop with a bunch of other people. And then she happens to see this child in the back of a van. So she knows that somebody has kidnapped a child. One of these people is responsible for this child. And she starts to investigate it, and it's intense and just like, oh my gosh. But it is definitely one I can't stop thinking about. So it deserves that spot. Okay, here's this one. This one I also can't stop thinking about, but it's very, very negatively cannot stop thinking about it. And that is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. Oh my gosh, I dislike this book with a passion. I wouldn't even say like I technically finished it. I got like halfway through this book and I was just so disturbed. I was disturbed by this book that I should have DNF'd. But I just kind of sped read to just figure out what was going on, because it's about this woman who seemingly has a perfect marriage, but yet her friends have noticed that her husband is kind of controlling of her. He doesn't let her out of the house in certain ways. Like there's something bizarre, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is. And what it is, I just did not like. I did not like it. So that is should have DNF'd for sure. Okay, The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. Oh my. I would say this is such a good book. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to put it in Can't Stop Thinking About, because it, for me, started that unreliable narrator kind of idea. And I think it was actually one of the first ones that did that. And I found it so interesting. Like this woman who has, I think it was called agoraphobia, whatever the phobia is, where they can't leave the house. And there's reasons, and you get to that. And I was really curious about her reason, like what was her trauma in her past. And this is another example of somebody spying on their neighbors and like witnessing something they shouldn't witness, and kind of going from there. And what got me was her character. I was fully invested in her anxiety for this, like her not wanting to go out. And then when the plot kept progressing, I was so along for the ride. Oh, here's another Stephen King. So I've only read 2 Stephen King books. And this, I wasn't on Booktube either, but it was right before I started my channel. And so I read Under the Dome. I wouldn't say like I loved it. That's the thing about Stephen King. I don't necessarily love his work, but I find his work really interesting. I think I will put it in liked it. This book also had some cringy, gory kind of stuff because it's Stephen King, right? I expected that. I feel like this was an example of a book that I kind of got on a whim. Like I was like, oh, the audiobook is available. I'll just listen to this because I have nothing else to listen to. And it sucked me in just by this premise of an event happened and then this dome like came down, this invisible barrier surrounded this town. You couldn't get in, you couldn't get out, and the like anxiety that created within the dome. How it all concluded, which I will not say because it's a huge spoiler, but that was probably why I liked and can't stop thinking about this book. All right, so I had to kind of adjust my camera here, but let me finish out with these last few books. So Dark Matter. You guys, I loved this book. Is it a Can't Stop Thinking About? I think I'm gonna put it in loved it. It is kind of a sci-fi thriller. It's about this like scientist who is kidnapped, but then wakes up in a world that was not the one he left, sort of idea. And he has to kind of figure it out. It's fun. It's so much fun. Okay, They Never Learn. This is a really good one. I'm gonna put it in loved it. So this is about a female serial killer who targets men on campus who are just kind of terrible. Terrible in some ways. She acts kind of like a vigilante. She takes justice into her own hands to get rid of them. And then in this story, it all starts to unravel. And it's fantastic. It's so good. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Okay. This one, I feel like I initially didn't love it. But it's also one that I think about more often than some of the other ones. And so I'm going to put it up in loved it, as in like more than these 2, Survive the Night and The Last Time I Lied. So Home Before Dark is about this woman who inherits this house, her family home from her dad, but this family home has like terrible memories for her. It's basically the scene of her childhood where something happened. I can't remember exactly what happened, but then her dad went on to like write a book about it. And it's been plaguing her life ever since. And then she goes back to fix it up and get it on the market and get it out of her life. And of course, bad things happen. Okay, One by One by Ruth Ware. Again, another, and then there were none sort of idea. I would say I liked this one. I enjoyed the, and then there were none aspect to it. I didn't love our main character. She was part of like this tech company and they were going up for this like big retreat, and there's something that happened at the company. And then things start happening and they kind of die one by one, sort of idea. All right, moving on. Blue Monday by Nikki French. I'm going to put it in liked it. It is another police procedural type book. And what I feel like would maybe even make it a loved it book is the main character of Frida Klein. So she is this psychotherapist who, she's mostly a therapist, and then in this first book she gets associated with the police department and starts working with them. What was hard about this book for me personally is it was about a kidnapping. It was about a child who was kidnapped, and I struggle with kidnapping ones. I don't usually pick up thriller books that are about kids, short of like No Exit, I feel like is on here, and Blue Monday. I really avoid kid thriller books. I can't. As a parent, I can't. And so I'm going to put that there. Then this one I read, All the Beautiful Strangers, I think it was, or All Those Beautiful Strangers. This is a dark academia book. I liked it. It was interesting. I feel like it's not as well known as some other dark academia books, and it has to do with this group of friends on campus, and I cannot even remember what happened. All I do vaguely remember is that there's this like almost secret society that they have to like try to enter, and so there's a bunch of like challenges. There's some challenges. So that's what that one's about. Sorry, I don't quite remember, which is why it's in liked it. Okay, 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. I really enjoyed this one. Can't stop thinking about it. Going to take that back down to loved it. So this was my first Peter Swanson, and I feel like I've heard mixed reviews of this book, but it was again, and then there were none. In this case, it was a letter format where all the people got like a letter, a list of people that were like to be killed by an assassin or something. I can't remember. You're with each person and based on what's happening, and then you want to know kind of what the connection is, and do those last couple people survive or not. So good. Alice Feeney Daisy Darker. Oh, I loved this book. I loved that book. I thought it was really good. Again, and then there were none. Had to do with this family, this kind of estranged family. Like there's the grandma who is like turning 70 or something like that. She lives on this, it's not an island, it's just a place that often gets flooded out and they can't reach the mainland sort of idea. And she invites everybody for her 70th birthday, and things start to go badly. And there is a rhyme, which actually I would say of all of the ones I've said, and then there were none, is associated with, this one's one of the closer ones because of the like song and the rhyme that's associated with it that is very much the original. And so that was really good. I thought it was really clever. Some people saw it miles away. I did not. So, okay. As opposed to this, Ruth Ware. I feel like this one I'm going to put in should have DNF'd. I read this early in 2020, and it was just one of those books that I was just kind of disappointed by. And so it's about this woman who is down on her luck, and she suddenly gets like this letter that's like, oh, you have inherited all of this money because you're like the long lost daughter of this rich family or something like that. And she knows she's not, but she goes anyway to try and fool them or something to that notion. And I feel like this was a good example of like miscommunication. We'll stop there. I don't want to say too much. Next, the next Stuart Turton book. Okay, so this was not as good as 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, but I'm going to still put it in loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It's about this, like he's kind of a famous detective, like almost like a Sherlock Holmes type detective. This is slightly historical, and he is arrested, and he on his way back to Amsterdam or something like that. But on his way back on this ship, things start happening, like crazy things. Like, is this ship haunted? Are there like devils or demons? And it's so good. I really enjoyed it. Oh, Final Girls by Riley Sager. I still think this is my favorite Riley Sager. And this is his first, I believe. And I thought it was really good. It had that same trope of like, there are these final girls, the girls that survived kind of a mass killing sort of idea, and they know of each other and they band together, and then it seems like someone's starting to target them. So good. And it's our main characters trying to remember what happened in the past because it's kind of a blank slate for her. So it's got some typical tropes in it, but that was my first exposure to that kind of a book, and I just loved it. Okay, Lucy Foley, The Guest List. I'm going to put that in liked it. Another kind of, and then there were none. Everybody's on an island for a wedding. Someone dies. Why this is liked it, not loved it, because I typically love the and then there were none retellings. This, I just didn't like the characters. The characters really were just, there wasn't one that I liked. They were all terrible people, which I know it's a thriller book and I shouldn't hold out for like anybody I can relate to, but I usually like it when some of the characters aren't terrible. So that's where that one goes. No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. Now I just read this. I'm going to put it in liked it. It's about a group of sisters who have to go back to their childhood home, the home their parents were murdered in. They don't really know what happened and they kind of start to figure it out. It was okay. It was good. I liked it. The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Now, I think this is a loved it, not quite a liked it, but it is also just so fast paced. Twist after twist, and I thought it was really clever. It's about this woman who is kind of running away from her past, and she house sits for this house that's kind of far away and away from a lot of other houses except for her neighbor, but even then she doesn't really want to talk to him. And so she's just bored, and she started reading some books off of like Kindle Unlimited or something like that, and she reads one that's just terrible and she rates it 1 star. And then the author reaches out to her in a really creepy sort of way, and it starts from there. So, okay, that one. And then The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Okay, so this series, it's a YA mystery thriller series, wasn't my favorite, but I liked it well enough. Like, it wasn't like a should have DNF'd it sort of idea. I liked it. I loved her other series a whole lot more. But this one has to do with our main character, because if I remember right, they all have kind of a supernatural ability and they help out with cold cases through the FBI. And then this last one, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. As for how much I disliked Sometimes I Lie, I didn't mind Rock, Paper, Scissors. I thought it had some clever moments. I'm going to put it in liked it. It had to do with this married couple whose marriage was a struggle, and they were getting away at this place, this isolated cabin, and the only issue was that her husband, he had like face blindness or something like that, and so he couldn't remember people and faces, and it causes some strain in their marriage, to say it lightly. And there's some reveals that were fun. It was a fun book. Okay, so looking at this whole thing, I'm just trying to see if these are kind of representative. I would say those are pretty representative of thrillers that I cannot stop thinking about. And then as for this, I wouldn't say any of these need to be bumped up. No, I wouldn't say any of these need to be bumped up to like can't stop thinking about it, because I really did love these. And these, yeah, this seems about right. These are solid DNFs. These should have been DNFs. I can't think of any of these that I would have put in the DNF. I'm glad I read everything up here. So yeah, that was pretty fun. I love doing these. I feel like as much for myself as for like to share with you guys, because they're fun. I feel like it helps reveal a few things about my reading tastes. It helps reveal the fact that I really like And Then There Were None. I really don't like psychological thrillers or gritty thrillers. And so yeah, this is what I've read over the past couple of years, like 4 years. If you guys have any recommendations based on what you see in this chart, let me know. Let me know what you think, because I'm always open for more thrillers. I really do enjoy reading them, and I read them pretty regularly. They're just not the main thing I read. So anyway, I hope you all are doing well, and I hope you enjoyed this tier ranking video. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next book video. All right, take care, friends.